Good deal. It's that time of the week, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Real Fridays with Jeremy Potter on time, new haircut, Brock Cassidy, not a new haircut, but also on time, and Rick Roque, Dr. Rick. And we're here with special our special guest, John Tallinger. And John, well, first of all, Real Fridays is intended to be a serious conversation, but we tend to sort of be fairly light in our approach to, the knowledge and in expertise that we have and our experiences in the week, leading up to this particular call, just talking about all things housing, mortgage, and real estate, and we try to skip talking points or marketing taglines and focus on just real talk, real conversations about what's of real value and, to lenders and to mortgage companies and also just what really is going on in the marketplace without a lot of the sort of sales fluff and the like. So, love the fact that we have Class Valuation. I'm a big fan of Class Valuation. I know I was introduced to you by Jeremy. Before we get into that though, it's a sad day. Bill Belichick is no longer part of the New England Patriots. So it is a sad day.
Hell of a run, though.
I think we need to have just a moment of silence, please. Bow our heads. And the church is without a priest. The church is without a priest.
Listen to you. That's a pretty dramatic take, but it rings true in New England, right? Football is a religion. The Patriots have become a religion, so I guess you're not far off. But
consistent with the religiosity of New Englanders, we'll complain when Father says whatever, but we're not all that devout,
Although JT and I being in Detroit, I was joking with a lot of people at the conference here. Yeah, I love the shirt too. Everybody was like, "How are things in Detroit?" And I was like, "Well, you're asking me the right question because Michigan just won the national championship and the Lions are in the playoffs. So you would think that Detroit's comeback is complete. This is like if you were asking like how it's what we were looking for. This is what we were looking for. Everybody couldn't be happier this week.
Hey, Brock, is Jeremy coming across as muffled and sort of Darth Vader-ish as I think he is?
Yeah, your audio is terrible, Jer.
Yeah,
okay. Literally, it's
good to know.
Revenge of the Sith, like
Anakin's turns.
Yeah. Was that an ode to Bill Belichick and the hoodie and the kind of like the dark Sith there?
It was part of the shtick, yeah. No,
you almost look like you have a stained glass window behind you. I don't even know what that is behind you, Jeremy, but it
and now he's frozen.
Yeah.
Jeremy, let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's not say everything's great in Detroit or in Michigan. Let's get the win Sunday. Let's beat Matt Stafford. Let's exercise some demons and win the first playoff game.
Jeremy, I wonder if it's your earbuds.
No, man, I'm in a hotel lobby. I'm trying to make sure I get the best Wi-Fi or cell connection possible, but I'm 95% sure it's sitting in a hotel lobby.
Do you want to just try to log back in?
Sure, no problem. Take it away. Talk.
No, go ahead and log back in. Don't log out and not come back. Yeah. Anyways, so typically what we do, we kick off with just any kind of weekly rumors or any kind of weekly headlines, within the last 7 days or so, since we had really the last 7 day headlines. Is there any? Of course, Loan Depot was in the headlines with the breach. That breach. It's amazing to consider the technical and the regulatory ramifications on data breaches, because it's, for the most part, it's the industry as a whole is fairly lax, even though the regulations and the enforcement actions have been few, but the at least technically, there's a lot of different perspectives as to what's compliant, as to how to ensure data security, depending upon the size of the organization and sort of the setup. It's kind of interesting because some companies don't care if you use your laptop, your personal laptop. Some companies, because you're doing a Citrix or a VPN into a central server to engage, with your LOS. And other companies, it's much more restricted, but it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of attention to the matter until there's some kind of a breach. And there really hasn't been too many breaches on the lender side. First American had their issue, a week ago, and I think prior to that, was it Chicago Title?
Fidelity.
Yeah,
which also affected, or one of them affected ACI, the appraisal software, which was a big deal. Obviously Loan Depot now, but it's scary. I mean, it's funny. I mean, full disclosure, this morning we have a daily stand up with our senior leadership, and our CTO was asking us for advice. He said, we were going to do this webinar talking about security for appraisers because of the ACI appraisal software data breach that just happened. And our CTO was like, should I even go on and talk about it? Does that make us more of a target? Or so yeah, it's a tricky time. I will say we're almost somewhat fortunate. We started working with Chase a year and a half ago. And when you work with, as a vendor, when you work with a big bank like Chase or any of the really big ones, it completely changed. With my cell phone, laptop, everything is so locked down now. So I guess we're somewhat fortunate, to that extent. But it is surprising how many, like Loan Depot is that's a massive lender. It's a big breach.
Hey, JT,
yeah,
I have a quick question.
Right.
If I'm working here,
Oh, you're good. Yeah.
You talk to a lot of originators and you talk to a lot of brokers. Are you hearing yet that people are like starting to think about making decisions or talk to their lenders or their employers about this issue? Is it reaching that level, or is it kind of like we're all in this together and it's not yet a concern for the folks you talk to?
Well, everyone's starting to worry more about it. Not so much the brokers individually, but the brokers have more so seen. I haven't had brokers talk about like their security so much as they're worried about it happening to the lenders that they're working
delivering
with.
loans. Yeah, that makes sense. Rick, somebody asked me at this conference if you were recruiting a loan officer or recruiting a branch, if they would start asking about the lenders' cybersecurity because they don't want to be down or they don't want to have any delay. And I haven't seen it or heard about it.
That's not part of the LO conversation at all.
That's what I figured, but I thought I'd ask.
No. I mean, it's not. I would say that it really only comes up when a loan officer is joining a mortgage company and that mortgage company has a particularly, could be more compliant, but rigid perspective on it. And then typically the quip is, well, gosh, I haven't had to do it this way for the last 3 employers or what have you.
Sure.
So it's either a company's being too conservative or they're actually just being compliant to maybe more to the letter. Because, the ability to, I mean, with the ability, I mean, technically speaking, it would strike me theoretically that we should all have our own work phones as well as laptops and the inability of downloading files, onto a thumb drive. But I don't know how you do any of that, to some degree. I mean, I think there is and you'd probably know this more than anything as, being a lawyer, Jeremy, is that best efforts, even though doesn't necessarily satisfy any kind of requirement. But if you can demonstrate like a really serious rigor, documented process, this is what we're doing, and we are doing the best we can, best efforts, that does go a long way in a conversation. It may not totally protect you, but I do think it goes a long way, at least to say that, we're doing the best we can, and we can't avoid bad actors or some really innovative employee who decided to steal a bunch of files and,
Dude, agreed. It's much, training has gone a long way and it's pretty good. I think actually, we're not even, at least from what I heard, we're not even really talking about employees clicking on the wrong link or doing something malicious. It's actually like the hacking has gotten so good that it's coming from like spoofing business partners, spoofing referral sources. It's even like a B2B phishing or whatever the word for that is in the technical community type of activity. So it's gotten really sophisticated.
It's funny. I had an employee, a few years ago, not with Cross Country, another organization, and she got a text message from like the CEO of the company saying, hey, I'm tied up in a meeting for an employee. Do you mind running to the store and getting like $300 worth of Target gift cards? We want to raffle them in today's
classic. Yeah.
You know, and she actually did. She went to Target and I was in a meeting. I was inaccessible, so she just thought she was doing the right thing that the CEO was telling her what to do. She went to Target and got like $300 worth of gift cards. And then the next text was, "Oh, okay, great, thank you. Can you just make sure? I want to make sure you got the right gift cards. Can you take a photograph of the cards front and back so I can get an understanding?" You know, and she did, and that's all. Yeah, and she was toast.
We get them constantly. We have like 700 employees, and they get, so the first time I saw it, I was sitting next to our CEO on a flight to California, and I got an email from him, but it looked like it was from him, and it was asking me to, hey, I'm traveling. Can you move $20,000? And can you have CFO move $20,000 to this? And I'm like, what? He's like, dude, what the hell is that? So we get texts, our employees get texts that say, this is John Fraz, the CEO. So they're constantly out there, and that's the tricky part. It's like trying to catch if all you need is one employee, you need one person to click on the wrong thing. So
it adds just another layer of complexity to like an already competitive, already complex thing that we're doing here. So everybody's industry, I think they consider it pretty complex, but you layer this on top of years of compliance, years of different like competitive, lead gen sales and marketing spend, and then in a down market relative to just typical volume and interest rates, you layer all this stuff on top. It gets pretty crazy pretty quickly. I did a panel.
Obviously, no part of this is funny, but kind of ironic was Monday, the day that the Loan Depot news came out. Probably an hour after the news broke, we had an IT governance call with what will be our biggest partner lender, and so that I imagine that call was about 5x harder than it would have been if it had happened Friday versus Monday. It still went fine, but we've done the right stuff to partner and done the SOC 2 and everything. Like at least for a startup, we're pretty buttoned up, but it's crazy how much the timing of it now. Everyone's thinking about it.
Yeah.
What happened? It happened to Mr. Cooper too. Now that I think about it, which is, they're massive. So.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say these professional hackers are profoundly, like you almost can get. They're profoundly professional. In other words, like they lock your database down. Yeah. They send you a contract saying wire us $200,000 or what have you. Once it's wired, we agree. It's just the weirdest thing to execute a DocuSign or something to this effect, but we agree. We'll give you the code, the key to unlock your database so you can get access to your customer data. And invariably they do. Like it's not a true.
I was talking to a cybersecurity expert, Rick, who said when you're dealing with good bad guys as opposed to bad guys, the good bad guys and the ones you're talking about will actually help you. They'll troubleshoot the key to make sure you get your files back once they get paid. Like it's a true business. It's not. And then there's, of course, the bad actors who are in it for malicious intent or chaos or what have you. And then it's a different story. But you're not wrong. So that's one of the big themes of the week for sure. The other thing I wanted to talk about, though, John goes all over the country. JT, you're like everywhere, talking to everybody. And I was curious if you're seeing pockets that are more optimistic than others, like especially being in the valuation business too. The hotter market's probably more optimistic. Can you talk about like what you're hearing from originators, lenders, brokers? Are there pockets of the country that stand out where you're like, they're actually doing great? Or believe it or not, this area of the country is like doing really well in this market?
A lot more optimism lately. Obviously, rates trickling down and some of the Fed announcements. One thing I was talking with two kind of important people that I've known for a long time at Freedom Mortgage yesterday, and I put a lot of stock in what Freedom does. Stan Middleman's an absolute genius. He's one of the few people in the industry that truly seems to have a crystal ball in his head. Like Stan when he makes a decision, whether it's to back off pricing or to pull products back, for a little bit, he's generally right most times. And I talked to their wholesale, their TPO division yesterday, and they're looking to hire 15 new AEs right now, which is I think a good sign, because again, Stan's track record has been very, very good. There's a lot of optimism and a lot of hiring going on right now, on top of the fact that, because of how bad it was, in 23. I mean, we've never seen this much really, really good quality talent from the industry out available. I mean, there's people who have been stalwarts at their company for years and years and years. So if you're looking to hire, there's a great opportunity right now. There's really, really a good talent base. But yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of signs. I mean, the mortgage broker community is really, really interesting. I mean, I spend half my day just texting and calling and just kind of communicating with brokers. But they're starting to see things pick up. They're starting to see some things kind of loosen up. Not so much. I haven't so much seen regionally, like specific pockets. It's more so, generally some of the bigger players are starting to kind of put more chips on the table and trying to push in for preparing for what the new normal is going to be here.
Right on.
And your existing GT, your existing product set in customer, how long? I'm shocked at the number of employees that you have in the scope and breadth of the organization. Like, tell me about the growth. It seems like that's been fast and fairly furious.
Yeah. So we, I mean, long story short, I graduated from Michigan State in 2002 with an advertising degree, and I also got my appraisal license at the same time. So I started appraising when I was actually 18, went away to college, and every summer I'd come home and get my apprenticeship hours in. So I graduated with an advertising degree in a really bad market for advertising. Kids I was graduating with were moving to Chicago, taking jobs at like CDW for 24 grand a year, and their parents were subsidizing all their living. And then, so the easy path was, hey, I can just go right into appraising houses and make a lot more money. So I did that for 7-8 years. And then I helped start Class in 2009. So I was the first employee. And we started obviously very small. We were somewhat captive to UWM back then. Actually, Matt Ishbia owned 100% of Class when we started. I was the first employee. And so we bought Matt out. We exited him completely in 21. Because it ended up being a little bit of a conflict. It was hard for us to get business from his competitors because they didn't want to put money in his pocket. But so for years, in the first 6 or 7 years, we were really, really wholesale based. Like that was our target market. Kind of grew in that space. Got to know the broker space really well. Became the biggest AMC in the wholesale space. And then really the last 5-6 years, being owned by private equity now. We've done a lot of organic. We've had a lot of organic growth, so we get in the door with a lender on the wholesale side, and then we perform well, and then we get opportunity on the retail side. But we've been really, really aggressive in the M&A acquisition space. So we've made, I want to say 17 or 18 acquisitions in 22 months. So much of that has just been, picking up smaller competitors or very strategic competitors. There was a small AMC that was based up in Maine, and we kept running into them. They're by far the best there. Everyone wanted to work with them. So we said, okay, we're going to buy these guys, not change what they're doing, but help give them more resources. So now all of a sudden we have by far the best coverage up in, Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire. And then there's been a lot of consolidation, and we've really kind of been leading the charge on that. So at this point now we've become, the largest AMC in the country, and we have 255 staff appraisers around the country, which is a huge advantage because they're our employees. They work for us. So, if someone's in a pinch, just had right before New Year's, like the Thursday going into New Year's, not many people were working. Broker calls me and, hey man, I need you to pull a rabbit out of a hat. I need a 10:07, which is just a rent schedule. But I need this appraisal. It was 5 p.m. He's like, I need it by 8 in the morning. Can you pull a mirror? Yep, do it. I pulled it off, got it done, had it to him by like 2 a.m. and they were able to close their loan. So the growth has been interesting, but we've become really, really diverse. We have a bank segment, we have a huge credit union segment, private hard money, TPO wholesale, consumer direct, distributed retail. So the growth has been pretty staggering. But I mean, at the end of the day, just trying to continue to grow and get better, and really trying to leverage digital, trying to really help drive towards what the future evaluation looks like.
I have a question on that, but I want to turn it over to Jeremy or Brock. Go ahead.
I'm going to ask the same question. I'm going to be like all over that. What do you think the future is? Because, the technology component, I guess the way I always looked at it, and JT, you've heard me say this probably a bunch of times, but like for everybody else, like, we're basically taking imaging of a human body, and we can show it to a radiologist who doesn't even have to work in the same hospital where the imaging happened, right? The radiologist can work from home. They could be at Johns Hopkins and the imaging is done at Henry Ford. They could be out in Denver. You're sending imaging to San Diego. And we're evaluating like the intricacies of the human body. We can do the same thing with a house. You guys know how to capture traditional appraisal. You know how to capture data. You know how to capture 3D imaging. Can you talk a little bit about how that all comes together? Whether that's like Class has to bring it together with all these acquisitions and kind of deliver, or it's also lenders that are willing to accept it. Where do we stand on inserting like really dynamic technology to improve that appraiser's experience or the lender experience?
Yeah, so a lot of that lately has been, so much of that's driven by, GSEs. It's driven by Fannie, it's driven by Freddie. Yeah. It's no secret, the appraisal, we obviously the appraisal is just one piece of the lending process, but it's a really important piece. And so often it's either the title or it is the appraisal side that is what the holdup is in the loan. So and we all know what happened in like 21 and parts of 22 where rates went from 6.5 down to 3 or below, and there was just the appraisal industry really got exposed at that point. It's an aging workforce. We've lost, I believe, 7,000 or 8,000 uniquely licensed appraisers since COVID started until now. That appraisal population has shrunk pretty dramatically. So the odd thing is like right now, a lot of lenders and people throughout the industry, they feel like, appraisals they're not a problem right now. Well, yeah, of course they're not a problem because volume, rates are high still, volume's low, but it's going to be a problem again. And appraisal is just, it's really the most antiquated segment of the industry, in my opinion. You're totally right. Back in 2007, when I was appraising houses, I really had to go to the property, walk through, inspect it, see it with my own eyes, get my pictures. But now it makes no sense to. It's like when you go to the dentist. The dentist doesn't come in and clean your teeth. Oral hygienist does. That's not the best use of the dentist's time to come in and clean your teeth and floss and do all that stuff. Highest and best use. You utilize. You want to maximize their time doing what their expertise is. So we're really moving towards a point, in the pathways there. And Fannie and Freddie have piloted and started to roll out some really good products that allow us to bifurcate that process, send a non-appraiser to the house. The way that we do it is we send a what we call a inspection expert or a property capture expert, and we background check them. But really the data, the tech is what does the job. They go through with either an iPhone or a specific camera that we have that uses LiDAR, and it measures each room, and it actually measures it to ANSI standards. It's unbelievable, and it does a full scan of each room. And so the amount of data that we have now, like if we send someone out to just go and collect the data and do the inspection piece without the appraiser being there, there's so much more data now. You can see everything, as opposed to the appraiser going and taking one picture of the kitchen, one picture of the living room. So there's so much more there now. So the appraiser, who is traditionally spending 60-70% of their time driving around from house to house, driving past the comparables, getting pictures, now that appraiser can sit at their desk, sit at their office, not have to go out in the field, and they can do what they're actually, what they were educated for, what their expertise is, actually analyzing that data and putting together the value conclusion. So we're really driving towards that. The biggest problem right now is adoption. Getting adoption is difficult, and what's going to drive that right now? If appraisals aren't a problem, it's hard to get people to want to try something different if the method that they're using right now is working. Where I think we're going to start to finally see more adoption is when rates decline and we start to see turn times for appraisals get extended. Then people are going to start taking it seriously and say, okay, how can we get from a 7-day appraisal down to a 2 or 3-day appraisal, which we're doing right now in a lot of markets. Yeah. But again, adoption is a tough part. And then that's got to be driven by either the GSEs or it's got to be driven by the lenders.
Right on. So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this, JT, which is one of the biggest things that happens in this industry is we tend to still think linear. And what I mean by that is there's a one-to-one relationship between the way the appraisal community appraisers think about their lender. That's my client, one-to-one. I got the order from them. They're my client. What I wonder, though, is with Fannie and Freddie becoming such the force of the only things that can change in the industry have to come from Fannie and Freddie, the way you just described. It's literally now we're all just selling Fannie and Freddie's money, and they get to decide what everybody has to do with some nuances there. If you started to think about like the investor, big picture, as the customer, as the client for the appraiser, wouldn't you be able to create, I don't know if it's lead gen is the right word. I'm kind of looking to Brock to think about this, but the same way you guys look at consumer data as a lead, a real estate lead as a lead, couldn't you actually just like order an appraisal to an AMC like Class that ensures it's independent, get the appraisal done such that whichever lender the loan ends up at, you can deliver the appraisal and it's already done? Like, why do it in the time constraint of like 10:03 signed to like closing where it's all fire drills and chaos? Why not just do appraisals and make them universally buyable by any lender that ends up with the loan? Do the appraisal when there's no pressure, like when the house is listed, or the way there's less pressure in refis, certainly. So refi appraisals is like, you got to get them done, certainly, but it's not the same as a purchase contract. Why can't, JT, why can't we just order appraisals and have them be leads like
beyond cost? Like beyond cost. Like let's assume you had the money to do it and you could appraise every home in America or any home that. Go ahead.
Even listings, somebody's gonna buy it, Rick.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're eating the cost like for that much longer. It's maybe 60 days on an invoice versus 90 days on an invoice.
Different schedule of costs.
Yeah. Is there anything? Yeah, JT, tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, we and Jeremy and I, years ago, Jeremy and I started talking about this, and I truly think the future is, inspection at list. It makes so much sense. You go out there, you capture that data at the time of listing. Think about it. An FHA appraisal right now, it's good for the shelf life is what, like 6 months or 3 months, so it's got a shelf life. But yeah, you go out, you do the inspection at list, and then, as soon as that, the tricky thing there is you got to make it so, whoever does that captures that data, whoever does that inspection, that there's portability, that they can, whatever AMC ends up with that assignment, gets that order, that they're going to have access. So there'd have to be some sort of sharing or property or data sharing there. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing because when we go out and we scan that property, it geotags it, it timestamps it, so like it's right there in the code that this person the house is inspected on this date, and this is the exact geolocation of the property. So it's great. Like it's a time capsule right there. But yeah, that makes so much sense. You think about it. So if the inspection's already done, let's say the house is listed for 28 days, goes under contract. When you need the appraisal gets ordered, and boom, the appraiser just takes that data pack, completes it in a day or two, and you're done. Like that's what we're driving towards. But there's hurdles in all these things. I mean, it took a while to get off the ground, and for years, I think, in the early going, people kept using taxis in New York City and San Francisco, and now once it really got adapted, that became the new norm. So I think we're kind of at that point right now where it's getting more people to buy into to where it's headed, but it's got to make some sort of a tangible difference. Like, what's the differentiator? How is it going? Is it going to be faster? Is it going to be more accurate? Is it going to be cheaper? Eventually, we want it to be all those things. We want
all the above, yeah.
It's already faster for the most part in most markets, and we want it to be more accurate. And of course, in time, right now, the cost for a desktop or a hybrid appraisal is essentially the same as a traditional appraisal. But yeah, I mean, we really want to get towards that point where we can take that, and we have the technology to do it. It's just a matter of building it and getting adoption.
Yeah, I think the last time we all spoke probably was 4 or 5 years ago when I was at Rocket, Jeremy was at Rocket, and we were trying to figure out if there was a play to kind of pre-inspect certain channels of business, and one that I was running was the for sale by owner channel. And the big problem with this number one stated consumer problem with homes that aren't sold by realtors is that they don't know if the listing value is anywhere close to right. So our theory was, get the class valuation, either technology or person out there, take a look at the value before we do any of that, and then kind of certify it with Rocket Mortgage and try to tie the whole ecosystem together. And I still think that was a really good theory. I think maybe we were a little early on some of the parties adopting it, but that was a fun experiment to work on, and it's funny that was 4 or 5 years ago, and we're kind of coming back to hopefully something like that sometime in the future.
Yeah, I think we were right. We were right. We were just early, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, the other thing you talk about, Jeremy, is in fact, I was talking to an exec at a top 10 lender a week or two ago, and really, you think about it, if Fannie and Freddie are buying the majority, or Ginnie, buying the majority of these loans, I mean, doesn't it sort of, and they're the ones that are eventually pushing the buybacks. I mean, shouldn't there maybe be a pathway to why is the lender even underwriting these? If ultimately, couldn't the GSEs be actually underwriting those loans if they're the ones that are ultimately making the decision? They have all that data from all the appraisals anyway. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, the lender shouldn't even have to necessarily look at the appraisal, because eventually the GSEs are the ones that are going to sign off on it anyway.
Well, there's always going to be a CYA there, though. I mean, it's a trust but verify kind of standard. I don't see that for as long as there's risk. They're going to want to try to mitigate that the best they can because otherwise you're going to pass it on only for it to get kicked back for whatever reason.
But from a Real Fridays perspective, Rick, how there's this kind of ongoing joke about the IRS. They already know what you owe in taxes, but they require you to figure it out, and then they tell you whether you got it right or not. It feels a lot like that with Fannie and Freddie and appraisals. Appraisers are Fannie and Freddie already know the number, and they make you do all the work to see if your number matches. To your point, I guess just in case it doesn't, they have an ability to send a repurchase through. But the reality is that number is either going to be their number or it's not. So there is an aspect of either industry utility or at least data sharing that says, let's just get to the right number here for the consumer, especially if it takes massive amounts of operational costs off the table.
It's just a thought, but yeah, at the end of the day, we want, streamlining the price. You see how far the industry's come in a short amount of time. I mean, look, when we all got into the industry, it was abnormal for a loan officer to not meet the borrower in person. They would meet him in person, sign it to the apps, and it just doesn't happen anymore. Everything's moving pretty quickly now, and people are trying to leverage tech as much as possible. And I mean, I think we're finally, 2005, I remember my brother-in-law that owns Start Appraisal, I worked with him. I remember him telling me in 2005, hey, this is all going to change soon, in 5 or 10 years, every appraiser is going to be using a tablet, and it's going to change completely. And it's changing finally. It's finally gotten to that point. It's taken longer than we thought, but I think we're going to see a lot more, change with tech really throughout the mortgage process. I mean, we can see it now. It seems like it's finally happening where we're starting to see those efficiencies come into play.
Well, let me ask you this. And
that is kind of funny how a tablet is considered innovation, but yeah, go ahead.
No, so let me ask you this. one of the things that's always been curious to me, because I'm thinking about a counter to my own point, right? The counter to my point would be, well, each house is really unique and has its own characteristics, and we can't lay kind of generalizations over houses, similar to like my counter to the IRS example would be like, well, some people are beyond W-2 and they have other investments and they have other financial situations, so the IRS still makes you disclose all this stuff because we don't know. People are individuals, and houses are these unique assets. So if that's the case, so if you do the counter and you say, no, houses are these unique assets, we really can't do general data sets. We got to do very specific analysis. We got to do very specific data capture. My question then would be, why aren't we opening that data up to the market then? Why is what's available to the seller, what's available to the market, and what's available to the lender such a mystery to everybody? Like, what would then be if you take the counter and say, well, each of these is a work of art? Well, when you sell a work of art, you disclose everything. You disclose the chain of ownership, you disclose the owner in many cases, you disclose the facts and the history of the painting, you disclose the value and the appraised value of the painting, and then there's bidding on it and it's for sale in the open market. We claim real estate's this free open market, and we don't share any of the data about the houses, about the bidding, about the value, about the inspection, about the appraisal. Like, why not just have a completely open platform then, if you take the counter that it's a super unique asset?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I mean, so several years ago, Fannie and Freddie started, doing the UCDP, Uniform Collateral Data Portal, and they have built a massive black box of information. So every single appraisal that gets completed, I mean, we did maybe 475, almost 500,000 appraisals last year. And every single one of those got fed through UCDP. So all that data, all those pictures is in that black box that they have. But they can't, the only way that they can grow that and that's how they're able to do waivers in so many instances. That's what feeds that machine, is that appraisal data that gets pumped in there. But yeah, the tricky thing there is that, the GSEs have all the data, and then the lender, the underwriter, they get a bigger piece of that data that they can see the full detail of what comes back in the SSR reports, and then the AMC gets a very limited amount. Like if we pull the SSRs on the lender's behalf, it'll tell us a very limited amount. Like, this got flagged for possible overvaluation, this was flagged for this, and then the appraiser gets nothing. They get nothing from that black box of data, and it almost should be, the other way around, where they have that data, they can see what data that the GSEs have on that specific market to be able to help them to support what they're doing. So it is a little bit odd the way that works right now. That flow of information, it's someone has it, but it's just not readily available and exchanged out there.
I have a question. Given the breadth of data and information, why not monetize that information that you're collecting on the homes that you're appraising, and make the appraisals themselves free? Like, you can't tell me that Target and HVAC companies and Lowe's and Home Depot and large retailers aren't going to want access to the condition and quality and types of appliances and services that are in every home in America. And if you have such a dominant connection to that, monetize that and make the appraisals free.
Well, there's definitely, that's a huge talking point behind the scenes. Our private equity partners that sort of own Class, they have 32 portfolio companies, and there's a couple of them where there's some really interesting ties. So figuring out ways to monetize that data is definitely something that we're constantly looking at.
Because like Thumbtack, and this is public information, that they acquired a company that does kind of an OCR, like a data snag from home inspections, and the intent is basically to line up all of the data that comes in from a home inspection that's uploaded into it, and then assign different service requests in local professionals to say, hey, here's your home plan. Like, you bought this house, and here's your 5-year plan of things that you're going to have to fix or bring attention to. And oh, by the way, here's a discount to get it fixed. So here's the schedule. Here's the professional we can assign you to, and then here's the discount that you can apply to that as a result of doing business with Thumbtack. Like, I don't know why you guys are substantial. Like, why not focus on that area of growth and then just make the appraisal free? Like, why are you ripping off lenders?
Well,
I'm kidding,
yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, I mean, so, as you can imagine, appraisers, someone's got to do that work and someone's got to get paid. So, in the vast majority of the money that the borrower gets charged for the appraisal, the vast, 65, 70% of the money goes to the appraiser. The margin that we make, obviously is what allows us to grow and sustain. But so ironically, there's a bunch of lenders that have ongoing talks with to partner. They want to be able to partner with companies like Home Depot that use that data and say, okay, look, here's, we have this full scan of the property. We can actually smart tag all the appliances, the furnace. We can tell exactly what the remaining economic life is. Usually we get a pretty good view of the roof. You can tell exactly, what that, you can estimate, what the remaining life is on that roof. So it's definitely something that we're in the works on that we've talked about. I don't know how easy it is to get to a place of, making the appraisals free necessarily. But I totally get where you're coming from. And trust me, it's something that we're always looking at behind the scenes. It takes time to get to that point.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I'm changing the subject. So if you had a follow-up, feel free.
No, I was just going to say that it just strikes me that given the volume of service requests pertaining to a home, it's going to far exceed $500 for an appraisal. So it seems like, and it is an evolutionary thing. I was just kidding with the comment about lenders, but I do know it takes time to get there. But it seems like with the right partnership, it's a 24-month kind of cycle to be able to monetize that, not a decade. You know what I mean? I do think that's I think that's low-hanging fruit that you're probably have thought through, but it just strikes me that there's so much data there that the appraisal is like the least valuable thing. It's the data that you're collecting and data mining.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, 5 years, 10 years from now, I mean, shit, Jeff Bezos, started Amazon selling books, and of course you can still get books off Amazon, but I mean, that is now.
Yeah, right on.
I mean, how many about you guys, but I can tell you pretty much every day something from Amazon shows up on our doorstep. And sometimes it's not in 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it's in like 6-7 hours. So I definitely think things are going to evolve, and we could certainly be the vast majority of our revenue 5 or 10 years from now could come from something completely different, like you're talking about, Rick. But again, obviously this is our core business right now, and this is our focus is continues to be on providing appraisals for collateral for lenders. But yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. I mean, that data that we have is very, very valuable. And going back to your point really quickly, Jeremy, it would be, in a perfect world, it'd be great for us or whoever to be able to get in appraise every house in America.
That too. Yeah.
But because I can tell you that like the public records that almost every municipality has is wrong. Like their measurements, the assessor, when they go out to assess a house for their taxable value, for what their tax bill is going to be, the assessor at some point in time they had to go out and measure that house. But they're not going inside the house. So
right.
Like I can tell you the majority of the time the square footage is wrong. It's impossible to measure from the outside without seeing what the layout is inside. You can measure the first floor and the second floor from the outside, but if you haven't been inside that house, you don't know if that second floor is a full second floor or if there's a 2-story foyer or a cathedral ceiling in the living room. So getting that would be amazing and ideal. And the primary reason, obviously, why even if they have appraisal data that's 2 years old, you do need to see the current condition of the house for that collateral. Like someone needs to get in there relatively recently in case someone's destroyed the house or done renovations that weren't permitted or anything like that. But would love to see that. Would love to get to that point and make that data more easily accessible.
Right on, man. I appreciate you joining us. Thanks for spending time with us. I know we have like one more minute here, but I wanted to throw you a last question that was totally off topic from what we were talking about, valuations and appraisals, but still around the industry. Brock and I talk about this all the time, and I never feel like I have a good answer, and I want to see if you have a better answer than me, which is like when you pick events to go to and you're mapping out like quarterly or annually, like I got to hit this, I want to be there. Somebody asks you to be somewhere. Do you have an approach? Do you have a thing you're thinking about, like, this is the thing I got to get out of this, or this is how I know to spend my time? How do you approach industry events, and which one, like, how do you frame out like the ones you know you're going to try to accomplish this, this, and this, and what those things are, and just how you approach it?
Great question. So I just in the last month or so, put together a massive calendar of essentially every industry event from large to small, and then also a lot of client events. Like a lot of lenders have a leadership summit that you sponsor and you go to, things like that. And so then we kind of work our way down. We kind of do like red, yellow, green. Like green, we're definitely doing this one. Yellow, maybe. Red, we don't see value in this one. And one of the tricky things is getting an attendee list beforehand. For me, like that's a huge deal. I work my network and somehow or another find an attendee list in advance to be able to know who's going to be there. Really got to try to be efficient with your time. So if I'm going to San Diego for a mortgage conference, I'm also going to try and figure out, hey, can I find time to go visit this client and this client? I will say one thing, technology has changed so many things in all of our lives in every industry, but I can tell you with 1000% certainty, you can't shake a hand over the phone. Face to face, meeting someone face to face, you build a bond, you build a trust. There's a certain level of rapport that you build in person that you just cannot do over the phone, making calls, things like that. Even with Zoom and these technologies, very different. If we're sitting in the same room, it's very different. But yeah, I mean, the industry events, it's constant, and you do need to figure out, how to balance that. I'm far more valuable when I'm out in the field, me personally, when I'm out visiting, getting, meeting people, building relationships. But got to balance it with family, got to balance it with, trying to be in the office and get some things done back here. But yeah, a lot of activity happens at those events. So trying to narrow those down and then trying to figure out who needs to be at each one. Do I need to be there? Do I need to send Matt from my team? Do I need to send, Jackie from my team? So it's quite a process. It's taken us weeks to put that together, but we have it pretty well mapped out, So.
Did you say you were not going to be at the IMB?
I'm up in the air still. I know my EVP of sales is going to be there, but I've got another client visit that I'm supposed to do that same time in a different state. But I'm going to because KP's on a panel and some other people, I'm going to probably find a way to get there at least for a day or two. Because it's a great event. So
good. Well, good. Well, hey man, we really appreciate your time. I know we're a couple minutes over, but any other questions, guys, for Joe, for JT?
No, looking forward to seeing you out at IMB. Probably.
Yeah. I will find a way to. I'll find a way to likely get there. And please do me a favor, cheer for. Think about us. I wouldn't normally wear this, but got to get that Detroit Lions spirit going here. So
got to do it.
Cheer for Jeremy this weekend.
And Stafford.
Is there such a thing?
What's
His
that?
Detroit Lions spirit.
You're seeing it in real time, Rick.
The fan base is actually unbelievable. I mean,
I'm overwhelmed by it.
We can't all be the Patriots, but the fan base has been so loyal for so long, and the ownership's been terrible. But they finally have put something good together, so it's been exciting.
When I lived in Detroit, I lived for a couple of years in the building right above that parking lot where everyone tailgates. And Rick, I can assure you that the Lions fans make some noise on Sunday home games.
I love it. Well, I'll be a fan for a day.
Yeah.
Awesome. There you go.
So, right. Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thank
really
everyone for coming and on time. And JT, I appreciate you being a part of our show.
Thanks, guys. Hey, have a great weekend, everybody. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
See you.
Sure.
Bye.
Rick, I'll connect with you offline. I'd love to touch base at some point.
Yeah, no, give me a connect. I have some interesting